can do is just tell the truth and trust in the American people that over time they're going to know what the truth is.
Yes, it is time for the truth. Right here, right now. This is the Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives. With your host, John Matthews.
The latter-day prophet.
Baying against the hypocrisies of our time.
And Joe Hakos.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
The Conservative Syndicate is comprised of some of the most informed pundits and activists available today. Together, we seek to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state through education, information, and engagement on the religion of politics and the politics of religion. And now, your host on the globally syndicated Conservative Syndicate, John Matthews and Joe Hakos.
And hello, greetings out there all across this great land of ours and around the world. It's that time. It's time for the Conservative Syndicate. Once again, coming to you live coast to coast and around the world. Nationally acclaimed, the globally syndicated, the Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives. I am your host, John Matthews, along with Joe Hakos, who is still on vacation. He'll be back when he gets back. I've told him not to rush, enjoy his time with his family. I always like to applaud Joe and boast about him as much as I can. It's very seldom you find somebody that is so cooperative. The times that I take off from here and I go on vacation stuff, he just covers everything so well and does it without complaining. And, I think it's only right that when he's out there doing the same thing, visiting family and having a good time, that he not have to worry about showing up to work every day and doing what we do here at the Conservative Syndicate, which is to educate, inform, and engage you, our listening audience. Well, boy, we can breathe a sigh of relief. I thought for a moment there the Democrat Party had actually learned something from the election, had actually decided that they were going to do something to change course, but not to be. Nancy Pelosi was once again selected or elected as leader of the House minority by an overwhelming margin. At least two-thirds of the House Democrats decided to stick with Miss Botox Pelosi. And I think, they had this upstart guy, Congressman Ryan. They thought there was going to be, a possibility that there was going to be a change of leadership. But like everything else that Democrats talk about, sometimes I think they just talk to hear themselves talking. Sometimes I think they just want to give the impression that they're actually articulating something or they're intelligently explaining something. But, the establishment is the establishment. And the establishment, I guess, is much more important to the Democrat Party than perhaps the Republican Party, at least at this point in time, given the fact that the Republicans were not able to eliminate Donald Trump and get one of their vassal kings in there like Jeb Bush or John Kasich or maybe even somebody like Marco Rubio. So it is what it is, and thank God we can count on the Democrats remaining the party of do nothing, say nothing, or say too much and do nothing about it. And now that they don't have a president that's going to be able to govern through executive orders, if Donald Trump keeps his word with us, well, then they're not going to have a whole lot to do. They're not going to have a whole lot to do, which I guess will please the Republicans also, because obviously the Republicans don't really want to do anything right now either. Nobody wants to govern anymore. They just want their positions of power and influence and prestige. And now every election cycle, they all come out and tell us how they understand, they know what we need. So, maybe Mitch McConnell was right when he said that most people in America don't want to drain the swamp. I don't know. I don't know. But it's hard at this point in time because, everything has just changed. The election of Donald Trump has really changed the political landscape. Not that the establishment types, so the elitists or the, people that get into politics for life and serve in Congress until, they're just too old to get to their walker. But in terms of how Americans are looking at politics, one thing about this election cycle we can say for sure is that a lot of people woke up. Now, a lot of people woke up and didn't all respond as perhaps we wish they would have. But I got to tell you something right now. If either side of the political parties do not recognize the influence and impact that millennials had in this election cycle, then I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen the next election cycle. Maybe Uncle Bernie can run as an independent if he's still alive, or maybe they can finally get Elizabeth Warren up there. She's wacky enough to represent total progressivism, and put somebody out there, and perhaps we could have a viable third-party candidate that could actually win more than 1% of the vote, like Jill Stein, who apparently now is turned into a fundraising machine all of a sudden now that she's lost the election. $3.5 million doing the entire election cycle for her, and now I understand she's on target to raise somewhere between $7 and $10 million for the purpose of doing what? For contesting an election that she just has absolutely no chance of ever winning. Less than 1% of the vote. That puts her in the asterisk category with Lindsey Graham during the primaries in terms of favorability and likability and the whole, everything that goes with that. But, politics is a strange animal, and if this election cycle revealed anything, we know that, it's an animal that not too many people recognize from the outside. Only the creators of the monster on the inside really have a grasp of what they created, but they're certainly not seeing the change out there. That, I think, in some ways is disheartening and encouraging, because I really believe that the next thing that's going to happen here, once Trump takes office, I am not in any way, shape, or form delusional about an administration led by Donald Trump as being the fix-all for America. Not even close. But one thing about it is it got people thinking, and it got people to the polls. That's a step in the right direction. Now we just got to get them thinking right and get them to bring all those in their family and their friends that didn't make it to the polls, and we can finally get back to having a real representative government of the people, by the people, and for the people. What we need to clean house. And I'm hoping something happens in 2018 here with the House. As long as we keep a majority, I don't really concern myself with whether it's incumbents or new people. Hopefully new people, because new people bring new ideas, new energy, and a new direction. And I'm hoping that's what happens here. But in 2020, one thing's for sure. I'm hoping and believing that the Trump phenomenon spills over into the Senate, and perhaps we can clean a house in the Senate and finally get some real leaders in there, some real representatives of what the people really want, and do some damage here, do further damage. I like I said, with the election of Nancy Pelosi for the next 4 years as a House leader, or maybe the next 2 years. I guess some of them are up for re-election in 2018, if not all of them. I think it's every 2 years. Yeah, I think it's every 2 years the House runs. So she's going to be in place for the next 2 years, which assures us that nothing is going to change in the Democrat Party. Okay, it's going to all be the same thing. It's all going to be knife slinging and finger pointing and crying and downplaying everything that the Republicans may try to do. Not that I'm super enthused about them doing anything, but we'll see. We'll see with Trump in the White House. Let's see if he can use that Twitter account of his to bully Congress into actually doing their job. And so we're getting ready to go to break here, but I want to let you know what we're doing today. Donald Brockett, author of the book, The Tyrannical Rule of the U.S. Supreme Court, will be with us right after our breaks here. Supposed to be online with us any moment now. And we're going to talk with him. An outstanding book. I'm only about halfway through it, but it's a kind of a slow read because there's a lot of legal jargon in it. But it is a very articulate book as to the usurping of powers of the Supreme Court and what they have become. They have basically become the judicial branch of the legislative branch of the government, legislating in form of adjudicating from the bench on issues that a lot of them which haven't even been made into law. And the purpose of the court is to rule on the constitutionality of laws, not the constitutionality of issues, something that most people in Congress today don't even understand or don't know or don't care to know or deny or ignore. And certainly our president, our current president, certainly knows that and has used it to his political advantage to advance a progressive agenda through the courts. And now with the election of Donald Trump, we're looking at perhaps, hopefully, a more secure court, a more conservative court. And so we're going to talk to Mr. Brockett about his book here. And then we're going to continue our discussion later on about the Electoral College. I told you we'd be doing this during the course of the week and probably in the next week because it's not an easy subject to articulate on because there are some nooks and crannies and some twists and turns. And, of course, the perversion by the left on this topic is something that takes time to unwind. So hope you enjoy the show today. Stay with us. We'll be right back right here at the Conservative Syndicate. Don't go away. A healthy attitude toward politics will always be relentlessly cynical. TheConservativeSyndicate.net, doing our part to keep America healthy.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. Then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-790-5960. That's 1-800-790-5960. Again, 1-800-790-5960. Call now.
Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification require cancellation fee, auto pay, and paperless billing and other restrictions apply. If you can't see the difference, why pay the difference? Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Only Dish brings you the best in entertainment for less than $20 a month. Cut the cable and don't get directed. Switch to Dish because at just $19.99, Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. It's so simple. The same channels cost less with Dish. So since you can't see the difference, don't pay the difference. Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Get premium movie channels free for 3 months, starting at just $19.99. Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. Call now to save with Dish. Dial 1-800-600-1645. That's 1-800-600-1645. The same channels for less than $20 a month. Dish. Call 1-800-600-1645 for details.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoso. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoso Live Daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decisions concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardosolive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardosolive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did.
Attention taxpayers. If you've received a notice from the IRS or state, do not ignore it. It's also a big mistake to try and handle your tax problem on your own. If you owe back taxes, it's a fact that the government has the power to take everything you own, including your home, business, wages, savings, and your freedom. But here's the good news. There's a special toll-free tax hotline set up especially for you. This tax hotline will tell you about new programs that are geared to help you dramatically settle, reduce, or eliminate what you owe. But you have to call now. Take down this number or put it in your cell phone. But call 866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959. When you call, you get free information on how you can reduce or eliminate back taxes, including penalties and interest. You can also be helped if you have unfiled returns, a tax lien, wage garnishment, bank levy, or if you've been entered into a payment plan but can't make the payments. Don't make the big mistake in thinking you can ignore or handle your tax problem on your own. You can stop the collection process immediately. Call this special tax hotline today for free info at 1-866-761-0959. That's 1-866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959.
Don't get your panties all in a bunch.
The Conservative Syndicate.net, exposing weapons of mass distraction. Okay, hey, we're back, and you are listening to the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. I'm your host, John Matthews, and as I stated earlier, Joe Hakos, my co-host, partner in crime, is on vacation, sitting out there in the Rust Belt somewhere, and he'll be back when he gets back. I'm not real sure how long he's going to be gone. Supposed to be back at the beginning of the week, but he's having such a good time. He said, "Hey, man, take all the time you need," because Joe does such a great job when I'm gone. When I'm out, when I go on vacation, I'm usually gone 2 or 3 weeks, and he does a great job of covering the show. So I have no problem letting him enjoy his family. Having said that, we have with us today a special guest, Donald Brockett, who author of the book, The Tyrannical Rule of the U.S. Supreme Court. And as I said at the beginning of the show, I'm reading this book right now. I'm about halfway through it. Just because of time constraints, I'm not one of these guys that can sit down and read a book all the way through from cover to cover, and because of the other things that are going on. But anyway, it is a fascinating book, and I think probably, in my opinion, one of the best articulations of the abuse that is going on within our separation of powers, within our 3 branches of government. So how are you doing this afternoon, Don?
Doing just great, John. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I am so glad you took the time to join us today. I wanted to, I guess what I've gotten out of your book so far is basically 3 concepts or 3 ideas. One is the lack of Congress using Article 5 to amend the Constitution, because a lot of things that are happening on the left is they're just basically, with Obama especially, it's been governing by decree through executive orders and whatever he could do to circumvent going through the proper protocol to get things legislated, and Congress doesn't seem to be too concerned about that. I've listened to them rattle their sabers for 8 years now, but not really do anything about it. Then there seems to be an alliance, and I guess this was going on for decades, perhaps since the founding of our country, an alliance between the executive branch and the judicial branches, because the executive branch knows that the Supreme Court can help him or her, if that should ever be the case, get their agenda going. And then the type of cases that the Supreme Court are hearing much today, I find to be very out of whack. Like a lot of these things I don't think should ever be in front of the Supreme Court. So am I getting the right reading on that, on what you're writing?
Well, exactly. My concern after practicing for 52 years was that somebody needed to advise people of what was going on in the Supreme Court. The fact that they're misinterpreting language of the Constitution, taking the place of amending it under Article 5, which is what's basically required. I find it most interesting that people don't seem to recognize that the Constitution is a contract that was made between the states and those people that they sent to form the Constitution so that we'd have a United States. And they provided for the amendment in Article 5 because they didn't want it changed by anybody other than the parties to the contract themselves. And of course, the thing that people forget today is that the Supreme Court was not a party to that contract because it was created by the contract and didn't come into effect until afterwards. So how can it rightfully go back and say that privileges and immunities, for example, involve a certain idea that they propose, and then change the Constitution basically by doing that instead of requiring that it be amended?
One of the things that has always intrigued me about the Supreme Court is the fact that these people I get the idea of selecting the Supreme Court, but I've never been able to grasp the concept that these are lifetime positions. What was the thinking behind that? Why could they not be, let's say, just like a cabinet position per se, just to throw that out there? Why president coming in? Well, obviously, I think I answered my own question just by saying that. But the point being is that these are lifetime appointments, and I could never understand. Is there actually a recall process? Can a Supreme Court justice be recalled?
Well, John, it's interesting you raise that issue because I respectfully disagree with you, and I think you'll see that when you read the whole book. They aren't lifetime appointments. They're appointments as long as the justices are on good behavior. And the Congress would be the ones that would decide whether or not they are on good behavior. Now, I think that Congress could basically say, it's not good behavior for you to interpret the Constitution in a manner which avoids amendment through the elected representatives of the people. And in fact, our founders suggested that they could be impeached.
Yeah, and that's not something that has ever come up. In fact, I'm really surprised that the Democrats haven't raised it when they didn't get the judges that they wanted selected. But we have, just for an example, I look at Ruth Ginsburg. This lady, I don't know what keeps her going. I don't know if they reel her out off of life support when she comes into the court or whatever. But the appointments of Sotomayor and Kagan, in particular, to me. People that actually have voiced the idea that they want to legislate from the bench, that they consider themselves somewhat of an activist, and that they interpret the Constitution as a breathing document rather than something that's, I equate it to the Ten Commandments. They're in stone, and you go from that. If you want to change it, well, you get a new stone. But until that happens, you're not allowed to just say, well, this is what it should have said and this is what it should mean. So in light of the fact, I don't know that the Republicans will ever want to take on something like that. They can't do their job right now as they're supposed to anyway. But with Donald Trump coming in here, and we know that we're hoping that he keeps his promise, at least one conservative judge, perhaps two or three before he finishes his term. Do you think that the possibility exists that somewhere down the road that we're looking at something like pulling, I don't know, Congress going after somebody like a Sotomayor or a Kagan?
Well, I think that they should at least let the court know that they have that capability and that it could be considered because, the same-sex marriage case, for example, to me is a complete distortion by the misinterpretation of the language of the Constitution. And 9 lawyers should not be deciding social policy for the rest of the country without having any input by the public itself through their elected representatives. That is not what our founders had in mind when they drafted the Constitution or when the states ratified it. I mean, that was an important process through which they went that assured that it would be in place until it was amended by the elected representatives of the people.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% because that was one of the things as I'm reading. I'm about halfway through the book because actually I have to be honest with you. I have to read sometimes over and over here the way Hamilton writes, because they kind of talk a little different than we do now. So some of these words that they use some of the spellings. I'm like, don't these guys use spell check? But I understand in those days they spelled some words a lot differently. But it seems like, I guess the first question, real hardball question I'd like to throw at you here, is that Hamilton in his writings never seemed to really entertain the idea that we could have the subversion that we have out of Supreme Court and the imbalance in where we're kind of topsy-turvy now, where the Supreme Court is doing most of the legislating and everybody else is just sitting around watching, and then Obama is just circumventing it with executive orders whenever he feels like it. And the way that I think Hamilton used the word that it was a phantom, that I guess assuming that it would never really happen. What do you think he would think today?
Oh, I think he's turning over in his grave. the whole idea, again, of the people who got together and formed the Constitution was that this be a government different from anything that had existed on the face of the earth up to that point in time, that the people actually would have the right to govern themselves and be free of kings and queens and other despots who were in charge of them. And in fact, what's happened, because of the way we've let the Supreme Court do whatever it wants to do, is that they've turned into the despots. They've usurped all of the powers of government, and we're in effect ruled by the Supreme Court today, not by Congress.
Yeah, looking at the setup or the landscape out there in Congress today, and I've been around a few years. I've been through a few presidents in my lifetime, and I cannot imagine. I think the hardest thing I'm having difficulty grasping these days is that we have a Congress that doesn't really seem like they really want to govern. I mean, if something like this, some of these rulings, this ruling on same-sex marriage, let's say just 3 decades ago, let's say when Newt Gingrich was the head of the House or whatever, the Congress would be screaming bloody murder. That hey, you guys have overstepped your boundaries. And yet today, it seems like most of the cases that we hear, the major ones, are cases that are being heard on the issue itself and not about any past legislation or any laws on the books. I can't put my head around why Congress today just sits so idly by and watches it. Do you have any idea why that is?
Well, I think it's sort of the nature of politics that people run promising things, then they get back there and they know they have to fit into the system. They realize they probably can't bring about what they've promised because there aren't enough votes on their side. And today it's just easier for people to adopt the philosophy that they don't want to open a can of worms. And I think that's what they're there for. I mean, the idea of a House of Representatives, for example, where people are elected for only 2 years, was that they go to Congress and 2 years later they leave, and they've done as much good as they can while they're there. And the idea of a Senate with the, quote, old men of the Senate, as they used to be called. Now, I guess they're the old men and women, although that would be offensive probably to the female sex, are there to slow down the youngsters who come into the House by providing a check and balance within the legislative branch itself. But there's supposed to be a check and balance between all 3 branches of the government. And the presidency and the Congress have let the Supreme Court run amok without doing anything about it.
Yeah. How much do you think the president actually plays? And we know that that he would play, or she had Hillary Clinton got elected. Let's be gender correct here for a moment. But if we know that the presidents are the ones that select and choose the people and put them up for nomination if they want in the Supreme Court. But how hands-on do you see activity within the executive branch in terms of actually influencing the Supreme Court?
Well, of course, history is replete with stories of people appointed to the Supreme Court who didn't go along with the philosophy that the president thought they would go along with. So there's no guarantee about that. And you might be interested when you get to the end of the book in terms of suggestions I've made for changes that basically the president perhaps not be the one to make the appointment, that there be panels of individuals who could select from different regions of the United States in order to be placed on the Supreme Court. And that the only litmus test that would be required is that people would adhere to the Constitution of the United States.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It has to be changed by amendment.
Right. I agree. In fact, that's not having read to the end of the book, but that's actually something that I thought about The only thing I wouldn't like is I wouldn't want it put in the hands of something like the Senate, because they're just as bad as the president in some cases. We've got to go to our break here. We've got with us Donald Brockett, author of the book The Tyrannical Rule of the U.S. Supreme Court. We got to go to our break here, pay some bills, and we'll be right back. Stay with us right here at the Conservative Syndicate.
Talk Radio, WRS Cleveland.
Hey, I'll make you a deal. Give me 60 seconds and I'll give you directions to the Fountain of Youth. Okay, I'm joking. Well, kind of joking. No fountains, but youth, I got Nature's Youth and their premier anti-aging product, Nature's Youth RSF. With your sensible diet and exercise plan, Nature's Youth RSF can help you look and feel better. RSF is an all-natural amino acid supplement that supports your body to naturally increase HGH levels without any synthetic hormones. And elevated HGH levels can contribute to increased energy, improved libido, reduced body fat, and improved exercise capacity. Let's be honest. Who doesn't want to look and feel younger? Visit the newly designed website at naturesyouth.com or call 800-333-6923. That's 800-333-6923, and like them on Facebook and you'll be included in contests and exclusive offers. What a deal. Oh, speaking of deals, my time's about up. 800-333-6923 or naturesyouth.com. Who needs a fountain anyway? Call today.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When I had a heart attack at 42, I was not sure what the future held. But a year later, the doctors could find nothing wrong with me and took me off all my medication. What did I do? I took a herbal mixture of garlic, cayenne, and a few other herbs mixed in liquid form. I now call this Extendovite. I would have never believed that a few simple herbs could actually change my life like they did. Now it's your turn to see what the powers of garlic and cayenne can do for you. For only $69.95 plus shipping and handling for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid, you too can begin on your path to better health. For more information, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit our website at heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
I've owned my company for 14 years now, and I can tell you that payroll is a 4-letter word. I hate doing it. It eats up hours I don't have, and it costs me money I could be saving. But my accountant's too expensive, and I'm not sure who to call, but I know I need help.
We're Paychex, and we take all the hassles out of small business payroll. We save you time and money. It's easy. Call, fax, or give us your payroll information securely online, and we take care of the rest. We calculate the correct taxes, manage payments and direct deposits. We even send out your checks. Payroll doesn't need to be a 4-letter word anymore. We're so sure that we can save you time and money that we'll give you a month's payroll free. Just for calling 877-663-3830. Get 1 month's payroll for free. Call Paychex right now. 877-663-3830. That's 877-663-3830.
Hey, I don't back anybody unless I believe in them. And I do believe in the value of investing in gold and silver. And the company I trust to buy my gold and silver from is Swiss America. I've been working with them for nearly a decade. I trust them, and you can too. Swiss America will help you sort through and find the best options available when you're considering investing in gold and silver coins. Listen, for over 30 years, Swiss America has been offering Americans what they want in their investments: safety, liquidity, quality, reliability, and a potential profit. Gold and silver have a place in every investor's portfolio. So, why not let Swiss America help you diversify your investment portfolio now? Call now for free information. 800-978-3907, 800-978-3907, 800-978-3907, 800-978-3907.
Hey, Bugsy, you hear the news about Vinny?
Yeah, it's a real shame he owed money to the IRS and they finally cut up with him.
Just like Al Capone.
If the IRS can get to Capone, imagine what they can do to little old Vinny, huh?
Poor cat, he was on top of the world, and bada boom, bada bing.
What Vinny needs now is an offer he can't refuse.
Hey, you got a tax problem? Does the IRS claim you owe them a bunch of dough? They can get you too. So call the tax relief line now and learn if you qualify to negotiate your $10,000 plus IRS tax debt for up to a 75% savings. Don't be like Al or Vinny and get busted. Make this free call now. Learn how you may be able to pay the IRS less.
Call now. 866-657-8474. 866-657-8474. 866-657-8474. 866-657-8474.
Don't get your panties all in a bunch.
The Conservative Syndicate.net, exposing weapons of mass distraction. All right, hey, we're back, and you are listening to the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. I'm your host, John Matthews, along with Joe Hakos, who, like I said, is on vacation, and I hope enjoying himself out here in the Midwest. We have with us Donald Brockett, author of the book, The Tyrannical Rule of the U.S. Supreme Court. And I'm finding this book, I'm finding it fascinating so far because it's already answered a lot of questions for me. I'm only about halfway through it, but things that we have asked about on this show, just things like how can they do that, or what are they thinking? Most of the time, what are they thinking? But along that line, how do they do what they do, or why do they do what they do? And I wanted to get into, let me ask you this, Don. When can you pinpoint this drastic change from becoming remaining in the judicial branch to basically morphing into the legislative branch? Is there a time we can actually pinpoint this and say, the paradigm just completely shifted?
Well, sure. It shifted back when John Marshall decided Marbury versus Madison, which, according to law school teachings, is the case that established what's called judicial review, because in that case he decided that the U.S. Supreme Court was to be the final arbiter of all questions under the Constitution, not just those questions that had to do with legislation passed by Congress, but in addition to that, questions that might have to do with any of the language of the Constitution itself. And what's so interesting about it, and I think you've read that portion of the book under Marbury versus Madison, is that everything he said that has now been established as judicial review and the right to do that by the Supreme Court was what's called dicta. When you go through law school, you learn that it's the wanderings or the meanderings of the court and saying things about the case that have nothing to do with the case itself. Marbury versus Madison was a case in which the court said it didn't have the jurisdiction to do anything. So it couldn't do anything at all with reference to the action that was brought before them. But Marshall decided to opine that, however, we have all of this authority whenever we want to exercise it. And that was the turning point, and it's simply been accepted from that point on. It's not true because, when people say, well, it's the supreme law of the land. No, it's not. You go to the Constitution itself and you find that the only supreme law of the land is the Constitution, the laws made by Congress, and the treaties. There's no mention made of the fact that the Supreme Court opinions are the law of the land. They've just been accepted as the law of the land.
Right. Yeah, I remember listening to Barry Goldwater back when he gave his speech, The Conscience of a Conservative, and he had a question and answer period after that speech, and that was one of the questions he was asked. Do you believe that the Supreme Court rulings are the law of the land? And his response was, without hesitation, absolutely not. He wasn't even polite about it. But now, given what you just said here, if we take this Abigail versus Hodges, the same-sex marriage ruling, this was a ruling basically on an issue much more than a law, was it not?
Well, certainly.
Okay, now, could Congress or could states, because that's really what I'm kind of concerned about, is how the Supreme Court has taken away the power of the states, and the federal government has been kind of, what's the word? I like to call it an unholy alliance where they're kind of like, yeah, just let the government do what it wants to do. But let's say a state here in what's the word I'm thinking of? In contradiction to, they want to stand against what the Supreme Court said because they only ruled on an issue. There's no legislation that would stop a state from passing in their state constitution that says a marriage is between a man and a woman. If that was to happen, what can you kind of outline to us what the process would be?
Well, the process would be the same as it was when there was a question about blacks attending the school, and the marshals, United States Marshals, were sent in to enforce the Brown versus Board of Education opinion that came down at that particular time. The thing that I think is so interesting about it that people don't seem to recognize is the Supreme Court can't enforce its own opinions. It has no enforcement arm. So it has to turn to the president's arm, the United States Marshal, to enforce it. And in our history, and I think you may have gotten to that point in the book, we've had a president who simply said, well, Justice Marshall has issued his opinion, now let him enforce it. And he decided not to enforce the opinion of the court.
Right.
So that's part of the checks and balances.
So then in the situation, I'm just hypothetically, a scenario is, because I find it fascinating that the court would have ruled on this as an issue, but didn't take on the case of Proposition 8 out here in California, refused to hear that, which was an actual piece of legislation that was passed by the voters here, that marriage would be between a man and a woman. And the court wouldn't rule on that. They'd refuse to hear it, but yet they take on this issue with no legislation and say, okay, well, it's constitutional for people of the same sex to get married. And I'm wondering if a state just said, you know what, we're not going to go along with that. We're going to pass our own laws out here because we're a state and we have the right, and that power has not been delegated to the central government, and let's go from there. Now, do you think, I mean, we can hypothesize here, but so if Donald Trump was to say, well, you know, I'm not going to send anybody out there and force them to make, let same-sex couples get married, then there's not really anything anybody could do about it. Am I correct?
You're correct. And isn't that, in effect, what he said about abortion? That it should be up to the states. Yeah.
I remember reading John Roberts, I don't know, what the dissent on this kind of stuff that, basically we've taken away the rights of the states. And that seems to be, I'm kind of just perplexed how so many states could just stand idly by and just let this. Now, I understand out here in California. I mean, California has turned into a liberal stronghold for God knows what reason. But I guess our silent majority out here is still relatively silent. But this whole idea that we have a situation here where we have their making rulings on situations or issues rather than laws, as you point out in your book, it would seem to me that a state like somewhere down in Texas or something like that would say, hey, we're not abiding by this. We're going to do what we want to do as a state, and, whatever you want to do, come after us.
Well, and you did, I'm sure, notice in the part of the book that you've read what was said by the Virginia Commission on Constitutional Government in expressing their concern about the fact that states' rights had gone by the wayside, with the federal government deciding that it was to rule everything as opposed to the states. And it's done away with the concept that I mention in my book, that you have the ability to vote with your feet. If you don't like what's being done in your state, you move to another state where you prefer their laws.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And God knows I'm trying like hell to get out of California. The only thing more expensive than living here is trying to move out of here. But
but I understand that because of the property values, you can move out and buy 2 or 3 homes in some other states.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. In fact, I was commenting to my wife. We visited some friends down in Texas, and we went house looking. We just wanted to see what was out there. And I could have a custom-made 3-bedroom for about a third of what I paid out here for this house. It's the same age that I am, So it was really something else here.
That's what shows the benefit of having a difference in states.
Yeah, that's true. Look, we got to go to a real short break here, about a 2-minute break here. We're going to come back. I wanted to ask you, in the time that we have left with you, Don, your assessment of Donald Trump's list of Supreme Court appointees, and who on that list sticks out to you as somebody that would be a good choice. So we've got Donald Brockett. I don't know if you go by Don or Donald or both. Donald Brockett, from author of the book, The Tyrannical Rule of the United States Supreme Court. Stay with us right here. We'll be back in just a moment. There is an old saying, children should be seen but not heard. At no time is this more apparent than when politicians speak. The Conservative Syndicate.net, the adults in the room. Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardosa. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardosa Live Daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decisions concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardosalive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardosalive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did. History affirms a vibrant civil society thrives on freedom of conscience, religion, and choice. Any society absent these qualities stifles individual responsibility and accountability, thus enslaving its people by denying them their potential for goodness, creativity, and altruism. To that extent, oppression, coercion, and totalitarianism are multiplied exponentially. To counter such outcomes, the American Freedom Alliance was formed. The AFA is a nonpartisan, non-aligned movement which promotes, defends, and upholds Western values and ideals. The Alliance strives to build an international coalition of citizens of the West who together promote and protect moral values, democracy, and freedom. To find out more and become part of this valuable asset in the preservation of freedom and all its rewards, contact us at AmericanFreedomAlliance.org. That's AmericanFreedomAlliance.org. Let freedom ring.
Get your panties all in a bunch.
The Conservative Syndicate.net, exposing weapons of mass distraction. All right, hey, we're back, and you are listening to the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. We've got with us Donald Brockett, author of the book, The Tyrannical Rule of the U.S. Supreme Court. And I wanted to ask you, Don, in the time that we have left here, Trump is going to have to appoint somebody here coming up once he gets inaugurated. And as I said, I think he'll have at least, I'm guessing, at least 2 appointments outside of this, unless Ginsburg lives to be 100. But who do you like out there? Who do you see out there that would be the type of Supreme Court justice that we're looking for? I'm assuming you're a big fan of Scalia. I surely was.
Yes, very much so. And I think we do have to have somebody who obviously believes that the Constitution is something that should be followed unless amended by the people. I think we should appoint somebody who is a lawyer. They usually appoint judges. And they think because the judges have written, they can guess how they're going to come down on certain cases, but that isn't true. The judges have changed their minds when they get on the U.S. Supreme Court. The other places, they'll select people from law schools, and I don't necessarily think that's a good thing because too many times those are people that are in the ivory tower and haven't actually practiced and just look at things theoretically. Cases that go to the U.S. Supreme Court are real cases. They shouldn't be in a position like they were in the same-sex marriage case to suddenly find a, quote, right of dignity, end quote, within the Constitution when none is expressed, and I don't think any is inferred. as one of the justices in his dissent, I thought famously wrote, dignity is not given to us by the government. We have a dignity within ourselves. And too often today, people have succumbed to the idea that the government is the answer to all problems, and it's not. People are the answer to all problems. They're the ones who have to solve them, and as you pointed out, if Congress would just get its act together and instead of fighting with each other all the time, figure out how to solve the problems, we could probably do a lot better job.
Yeah, I agree. And two names I want to float here by you. I was looking at the list. I had it on my other computer here, so I didn't have the ability to drop it into to you on a link here. And the first one that comes to my mind, and I don't know that this would happen. To me, it seems like a long shot. But I really thought and really had hoped that this appointment that Trump is going to have to make come next year would have been Ted Cruz. Do you think Ted Cruz would make a good Supreme Court justice?
Well, he certainly knows a lot about the Constitution, and I think he'd be probably a pretty good choice. Mm-hmm.
And the other one that I heard, one of the names that I heard floated out there during the actual campaign was Dianne Sykes. Do you know anything about her?
No, I don't.
Okay. But I was looking at the list here, and it was great as you were talking here. So I'm looking at the list. Everybody that's on the list is either a current judge or an associate judge. There are no, per se, lawyers out here. There's Stephen Coloton, Allison Ide, I guess that's how you spell Eld, I'm sorry, Allison Eld, Raymond Grunder. See, I've never heard of any of these people. Thomas Hardiman, Raymond Kethledge, Joan Larson, Thomas Lee, William Pryor. That name sounds a little bit familiar to me, but I don't recognize any of these people. So, unless I actually sit down here and go one by one, I just thought you might have some insight on that. Anyway, we're coming to the end of our time here, Don. I wanted to give you the opportunity to basically push your book because people see this is the kind of stuff that I read as I'm reading this book. I was thinking, there are certain books that should be used in civics classes today, and I think this is one of them. Liberty and Tyranny by Mark Levin, I think it should be a standard textbook in civics and government and stuff like that. But this book, I like the simplicity. The difficult part is reading Hamilton's words because of the way that they talked in those days. But your ability to break it down and articulate it in very simple, understandable terms, I think it's very, very good. I'm really enjoying it. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to push it. How do people get a hold of this book?
Well, thank you very much for the compliment. I certainly, I just want to thank you. The best way, I think, would be the simplest website is Supreme Court Tyranny, all one word, .com.
SupremeCourtTyranny.com. Okay.
You go to that, it will take you to the criticalbookspublication.com, which is a little more difficult in name. And it shows the book and shows a way to get it, or you can get it through Amazon.
Okay. All right. One last comment from you here. Do you think Trump is going to hold to his word to get us some good Supreme Court justices?
Well, I certainly hope so. From some of the other things he said, he seemed to be backing down on some of the promises he made. So I hope he'll hold to this one.
Yeah, the only reason I supported the guy was over the Supreme Court. I don't care what else he does. Just get our Supreme Court locked in here so that we can stop this arterial hemorrhaging that we have known as progressivism. Again, Don, I really thank you for taking the time to come on. I'd like to have you on again sometime if possible.
Okay, thank you, John. Just give me a call.
All right, God bless. We'll talk to you later. All right, guys, it's time for, or we're coming up at the top of the hour here, and we're going to be, we got the Edwards Notebook coming up. We just kind of wanted to give a moment here to just sit here and talk about what's coming up next hour. Next hour, I'm going to get back on the topic of the Electoral College. I think this is something that really needs to be disseminated. There is, just like everything else that comes from the left, and it's just so bamboozled. It's bamboozled. It's twisted. In some cases, what they talk about and the way they interpret things is completely perverted. And I think it's really time that we take some time, because that's what the mission of this show is to educate, inform, and engage you, our listening audience, on the politics of religion and the religion of politics. And I think that this is one of those topics. You'll know if you listen to the show any length of time that we like to take topics and basically exhaust them. And so we'll take something and we'll say, okay, let's look at this and let's dig in as deep as we can to the point where perhaps even our own understanding becomes kind of moot. And then we'll try to find somebody that can help us with that. I mean, that's really what we try to do here. And this whole idea, people are asking me about this thing, popular vote versus electoral college. I get people asking me all the time about this. And I keep telling them, first of all, let's look at the real hardcore facts about what's going on right at this moment in time. One is, of course, the hypocrisy of the left. Sitting here, you'll remember the third debate when Donald Trump was asked by Chris Wallace, will you accept the results? And Trump just basically said, well, we'll see. And I think it was a completely appropriate answer, given the fact that we know the amount of voter fraud that's on the left, which, by the way, is why I think perhaps Donald Trump really should be a supporter of these recounts. In fact, if I was him, I would take it even further and say, hey, I got an idea. Let's recount everybody. Let's recount all the states here, But, of course, we know time being what it is and everything else, that isn't going to happen. But I think what I'm hoping is this recount really kind of exposes some of the problems with voter fraud that has been perpetrated by the left. We mentioned it yesterday, the fact that we have a situation here during the campaign. We talked about the primary. I believe that's when it first came up, when we really first started noticing it. It was right around the time of the Texas primary. And we started getting, I came on a show here and reported that it was on a day I happened to catch some of Rush Limbaugh's show. I was in the car and I was listening, and a caller from Texas called in and said that when she went to review her ballot down in Texas, I believe it was Austin, Texas, that Donald Trump's name had completely disappeared from the ballot. There were other people complaining down in Texas of the fact that they were voting for Trump and a straight Republican ticket, and the vote was being changed to Hillary Clinton. We talked about that noise was coming out of Colorado. And then Indiana had the big thing up there where they had the Patriot movement of the left out there examining the online registration rolls up in Indiana and found major discrepancies, 187,000, I think the number was, of people that had gone online and made changes to their data within a couple weeks of the election. We were about a couple weeks out when we first got that report. And so we were wondering, well, geez, what set that off? Of course, we have out here in California the number of invalid ballots, because we have illegals getting driver's licenses and now are being registered to vote when they get the driver's license, unless they opt out. They get a notification what party you want to join. If they can read the notification, because I assume it's written in English, if they can read it, they can choose to vote. And we know that California has been, kind of a bastion of illegal voting out here ever since Loretta Sanchez made it back in 1998 with illegal votes. So we are well aware of what's going on out here. We had the Florida thing with the Broward County and all this other stuff going on down there. Sheila, what's her face down there, creating absentee ballots and all this stuff. So I was hoping Trump would kind of go along with this thing. Anyway, we got to go to our break here. We're at the top of the hour here. We got the Edwards Notebook, and then we'll pay some bills, and then we'll be back, and we'll get into our discussion on the Electoral College. Stay with us right here at the Conservative Syndicate.
America being plagued by slobs or liars. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, as an American, I am embarrassed by the millennial generation display of utter disdain for America, the rule of law, and common decency. However, the real blame for the young adult crybabies on college campi throughout our republic and The nighttime streetwalkers who seek to kill the American dream, steal our national joy, and destroy private property lies with the hippy-dippy-era parents who raised them, along with the legions of government school educators who did their best to indoctrinate students against authentic American history, real science, Judeo-Christian ethics, and even the traditional family. It is comical to witness individuals who claim great fear over the possibility of Trump harming Muslims, immigrants, LGBTQ people, and minorities. First of all, Trump consistently called out illegal immigrants, Muslim terrorists, LGBTQ activists, and other progressive groups who were not genuinely seeking equal participation in America, but are working to overcome our laws and ultimately destroy our way of life. And that's the truth of the matter. I'm Ron Edwards.
Blowing away the myths and revealing the truth. You can continue to blow away the myths with Ron Edwards on Facebook, Twitter, and theronedwards.com.
A healthy attitude toward politics will always be relentlessly cynical. The Conservative Syndicate.net, doing our part to keep America healthy.
Prices are for base buildings only. May not be available in some areas. Attention business owners, do you want a stimulus package that really works? Before you spend thousands of dollars more than you should on your next building project, listen to this. General Steel has a stimulus package designed to help you save as much as half the cost of conventional construction on your next building. As much as half. That's right. General Steel can save you thousands of dollars with a pre-engineered steel building designed for your business or church. How about a 50 by 100 foot building for under $30,000? So don't pay thousands more than you should without calling General Steel first and save as much as half the cost and time of conventional construction. With the projected demand for steel in Japan and China, prices may be skyrocketing.
877-927-3360. 877-927-3360. 877-927-3360. Term life insurance. It can be a powerful way to protect your assets and your family. You work hard to earn and save your money to build a nest egg for the future. Don't let it get wiped out because you didn't plan ahead. Take the time now and make a small investment in $500,000 or more in quality term life insurance. Call the Term Lifeline and let us shop the best companies to give you the lowest rates. We specialize in policies of $500,000 and above. Ask about some of our 10 and 20-year fixed rate plans with guaranteed rates. Call the Term Lifeline right now for your free insurance quote. 800-870-3609. 800-870-3609. You owe it to yourself to protect your family and your assets. Make term life insurance part of that plan. Call the Term Lifeline right now. 800-870-3609. 800-870-3609.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoso. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoso Live Daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decisions concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardosolive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardosolive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by CitizensUnited.org.
All you can do is just tell the truth and trust in the American people that over time they're going to know what the truth is.
Yes, it is time for the truth. Right here, right now. This is the Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives. With your host, John Matthews.
It's a latter-day prophet. Saying against the hypocrisies of our time.
And Joe Hakos.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
The Conservative Syndicate is comprised of some of the most informed pundits and activists available today. Together, we seek to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state through education, information, and engagement on the religion of politics and the politics of religion. And now, your host on the globally syndicated Conservative Syndicate, John Matthews and Joe Hakos.
Okay, hey, we're back. Hour two right here at the Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives. We're glad to have you with us. And, I don't, as I said earlier, I just want to remind everybody, because I know some people tune in just to hear my good buddy Joe Hakos, my co-host and partner in crime. If you haven't heard his voice the last few days, it's because he's on vacation, and he'll be back when he gets back. I don't know how long he's going to stay out there. I thought he was supposed to be back at the beginning of the week, but he is still out there in the great state of Ohio. And, I just told him, take your time, do what you got to do, enjoy your family. And, and here's a heads up right here. The week of Christmas, we'll all be on vacation here. So what we'll be doing is playing archives. I may replay the archives that I played last week at Thanksgiving. Great speeches and debates of days past. I'm thinking they'll probably do that because I don't think a lot of people have heard some of the great speakers in our nation. Or if you have, perhaps you've forgotten. Okay, you can never hear. In my opinion, you can never listen to Barry Goldwater's 1964 acceptance speech. Or Ronald Reagan's A Time for Change, A Time for Choosing. Those kind of speeches are timeless, and I get something out of them every time I hear them. So just a heads up here, the week of Christmas we'll be doing all archives so that we can all go out and enjoy the holiday. Now, getting into the topic, this is our short segment, so I'm just going to kind of break the ice, and then we'll do our break, and then we'll come back, and we'll get into the meat of this. I started yesterday talking about the Electoral College. And this is something that more, when I first breached the subject, I thought it was going to be pretty simple. I thought, well, the Electoral College is pretty self-explanatory. But as I started digging into it and the history of it and the arguments for and against it, and I kept hearing, it was being floated out there by the left, the Alexander Hamilton's Federalist 68. Which is the argument, basically, Hamilton didn't do a whole lot of writing about how the Electoral College was supposed to work, and none of the other founders did either, outside of, what is stated in our founding documents and this, that, and the other. So he did expound on it quite a bit in the Federalist 68, and that is what the left is. And I knew as soon as I heard the quote, I thought these guys are taking stuff out of context and they're trying to once again twist it to fit that narrative. And I think I've used the analogy on this show about the Bible. I've run into 20 years I've been in ministry. I have run into people that will give you quotations out of the Bible and completely pervert the intent and what it means. And just, for instance, in the same-sex debate, so many pseudo-Christians out there will tell me that we need to accept the homosexual lifestyle because why? Jesus says, love your enemies, or Jesus says, love your brother. We're supposed to love them into the kingdom, that kind of stuff. And my counter is Jesus also said that you cannot be for and against God at the same time. You can't tell me that his word says one thing, but it doesn't really apply because, after all, we just want to be compassionate. That kind of stuff. There's a difference. Well, I'm not going to get into that because I'll get off on a pulpit here, and I don't want to do that. But the point being is that you can take Scripture and make it mean whatever you want it to mean. And I think, I kind of think God did it deliberately so that there would be such a thing as discernment and proper judgment. And that, as he puts in Corinthians, to fool the wise. He uses the wisdom of the world to confound the wise. And so it's that kind of thinking here. But we were talking about the Electoral College in terms of the recount. We know that right now Jill Stein is out there walking point for the Democrat Party, trying to at least surface. Here it is, the doublespeak of liberalism. When you sit there and say, well, we have no evidence that there's voter fraud. We have no reason to believe that there's anything that, is not really above board. But basically what it comes down to is because we believe that the Russians hacked the DNC and we believe that Donald Trump is tied in with the Russians, we need to check the integrity of the election. That is really, if they were really honest with you, that's what they would be saying. Because what they're saying is we just want to validate that everything worked the way it was supposed to work. And in spite of the fact that they all agree and they all admit that there's not really any evidence out there that we can cite, and we don't expect it to overturn anything. We just want to make sure that it was an integral election. And these were the people that were crying after that third debate with Donald Trump when he said, well, we'll see if I accept the election results. And they're talking about the integrity of the system. And it was, how can he dare question the integrity of the system? This is the way it is. The integrity of the system is pure. You can't screw it up. There's no voter fraud. And now everybody's out there screaming and yelling. No evidence, as they say, no reason to do it other than the fact that they believe that something happened because they believe the Russians are responsible for the DNC hack. That's really what it's all about. So anyway, and so I talked about that yesterday, but I want to get into the actual electors and how the Electoral College it was set up and how Alexander Hamilton explained in Federalist 68 how it was supposed to work. And I'm telling you guys, there's some real eye-openers here. If people actually read Federalist 68, they would know that there are a lot of things right now in the current system of the Electoral College that need to be reformed. So stay with us right here at the Conservative Syndicate. We'll be back in just a moment. A healthy attitude toward politics will always be relentlessly cynical. The ConservativeSyndicate.net, doing our part to keep America healthy.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. Then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-790-5960. That's 1-800-790-5960. Again, 1-800-790-5960. Call now.
Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification require cancellation fee, auto pay, and paperless billing and other restrictions apply. If you can't see the difference, why pay the difference? Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Only Dish brings you the best in entertainment for less than $20 a month. Cut the cable and don't get directed. Switch to Dish because at just $19.99, Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. It's so simple. The same channels cost less with Dish. So since you can't see the difference, don't pay the difference. Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Get premium movie channels free for 3 months, starting at just $19.99. Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. Call now to save with Dish. Dial 1-800-600-1645. That's 1-800-600-1645. The same channels for less than $20 a month. Dish. Call 1-800-600-1645 for details.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoso. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoso Live Daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decisions concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardosolive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardosolive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did.
Attention taxpayers. If you've received a notice from the IRS or state, do not ignore it. It's also a big mistake to try and handle your tax problem on your own. If you owe back taxes, it's a fact that the government has the power to take everything you own, including your home, business, wages, savings, and your freedom. But here's the good news. There's a special toll-free tax hotline set up especially for you. This tax hotline will tell you about new programs that are geared to help you dramatically settle, reduce, or eliminate what you owe. But you have to call now. Take down this number or put it in your cell phone. But call 866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959. When you call, you get free information on how you can reduce or eliminate back taxes, including penalties and interest. You can also be helped if you have unfiled returns, a tax lien, wage garnishment, bank levy, or if you've been entered into a payment plan but can't make the payments. Don't make the big mistake in thinking you can ignore or handle your tax problem on your own. You can stop the collection process immediately. Call this special tax hotline today for free info at 1-866-761-0959. That's 1-866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959.
Get your panties all in a bunch.
The Conservative Syndicate.net, exposing weapons of mass distraction. All right, hey, we're back. The Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from Real Conservatives. I'm your host, John Matthews, along with Joe Hakos. And hey, let me really get into some meat here today on our topic on the Electoral College. And I want to start out kind of a little bit offbeat to get into the meat of what I want to talk about here. An article I pulled out of the Christian Science Monitor yesterday, November 29th, Tuesday, yesterday, by Stephen Porter. And I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs of this article because when I read this article, it really made me think about something, and I'll explain after I read the paragraphs here. It says here that a Texas Republican announced over the weekend that he plans to resign his post as a member of the Electoral College that's down in Texas rather than cast a ballot for U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, a man he deems not biblically qualified for office. Now, just that comment alone there, you would think would just raise the ear of the left, that this man is using biblical standards to gauge whether or not the current president-elect is qualified. Imagine if Hillary Clinton had won, and he did the same thing. Imagine he says here that a Texas Republican announced over the weekend that he plans to resign his post as a member of the Electoral College rather than cast a ballot for U.S. President-elect Hillary Clinton, a woman he deems not biblically qualified for office. Now, just that phrase alone, if that line had been the headline, there would be an uproar in the left about separation of church and state, and that there should be no qualifications, no standard of measurement for president because of the First Amendment and the separation of church and state, and that the government can't establish any religion, and there is no litmus test, no religious litmus test for being president. This, that, and the other. All that would be the argument, but not a peep out of the media on this one, this guy's reasoning. The second thing I noticed about it, just in the first line here, is that why would this guy, I'm wondering, first of all, did this guy, had Mitt Romney won in 2012, if this guy was an elector in 2012, would he have cast his ballot as a member of the Electoral College for Mitt Romney, given the fact that Mitt Romney is a Mormon, and everything that the Mormons do or everything the Mormons believe is false? And they're not really Christians, regardless of how adamant they are in claiming they are. And there's biblical scripture that backs that up. You shall not add to or take away from the word. Well, the Book of Mormon is adding to the word. That other book, a pearl of something, that all adds to the word. Okay, their concept of who Jesus was is completely out of context with what the Bible explains. So I'm wondering if this same Republican would have cast a ballot for Mitt Romney. He would be unbiblically qualified. Now, the article goes on here and says, citing his Christian religion, again, the left would have a field day for this if this was about Hillary Clinton instead of Donald Trump, and his understanding of representative democracy. Here's another word that we need to spend time correcting every time it's being used. We are not a democracy. We are a representative republic. All right, we are a republic, not a democracy. Democracy is rule of the mob, and that's what's going on right now. The mob wants Hillary Clinton. Art Cisneros wrote in a blog post that he could neither vote for Mr. Trump nor break his promise to do so by voting for anyone else. Texas does not require its 38 electors to vote in accordance with the state's presidential election results. But Mr. Cisneros says he made a pledge to the Texas GOP that his vote next month in Austin would follow the will of the general public. The reality is Trump will be our president no matter what my decision is, Cisneros wrote. Since I can't in good conscience vote for Donald Trump and yet have sinfully made a pledge that I would, the best option I see at this time is to resign my position as an elector. Well, that is wise, and you should, because you're not even performing the duty that you said you would perform, and your basis for it, if this was Hillary Clinton as the president-elect, would be ripped apart right now by the media and all the leftists out there that want a godless society, that want a godless democracy rather than a God-fearing republic. Tom Meckler, Texas GOP chairman, said a replacement for Cisneros will be selected by the remaining electors when they meet December 19th. We respect Mr. Cisneros' decision and appreciate his willingness to step down from his position as a presidential elector in Texas, Ms. Meckler said in a statement, as Politico reported. Now, here we go. The announcement comes as Democrats have sought to persuade Republican electors to turn against Trump in favor of Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton. While the effort more than likely will fail, it could begin to unravel one of the nation's most controversial political institutions. As the Christian Science Monitor's Weston Williams wrote last week, the plan hinges on so-called faithless electors, members of the Electoral College who vote against the candidate who won the majority of their particular state. Now, we all know, you should know by now, that there's been a petition out there to petition the electors of each state, and because they believe that the popular vote is more representative of what the country wants, the Electoral College should be cast aside. And because we're stuck with the Electoral College, then the Electoral College should swing their votes and vote the other way. And you say, well, how can they do that? Well, it happened during the Nixon Kennedy election, if you'll remember, if you know your history. Richard Nixon won the electoral vote and should have been the president, but there were two votes because of the popular vote. I think Kennedy had won the popular vote, and Nixon had the electoral votes. Two electoral votes were swayed in Chicago, of all places, imagine that, and they went with Kennedy instead of Nixon, and Kennedy was the president. All right? So that happened. There were also problems down in Texas. Big problem down in Texas because they wanted Lyndon Johnson as the vice president because of the oil subsidies and everything else that was going on. Forgetting, of course, that Kennedy wanted to eliminate oil subsidies down in Texas, but that's another story for another day. But the point being is that these people believe that these electors could be swayed and can be swayed to cast their electoral votes in contrast to what their respective states want them to do in terms of the popular vote. You know that the popular vote, Hillary may or may not have gotten more votes popular vote. We don't know how many of those are illegal. But the point being is that because of California and New York, two states in the union with a large number of electoral votes, that she has that advantage. And that's where the popular vote is tied up at, not the other 48 states. All right? Now, here it is. It says here, they go on to say, since this year marks the fifth U.S. presidential election, the fifth U.S. presidential election in which the Electoral College winner lost the popular vote, with Mrs. Clinton expected to carry as many as 2.5 million votes more than Trump. How did they know it was going to be that many? They expect it to be about that many, and they still haven't finished counting? That's kind of curious. But anyway, there has been a renewed call to review, amend, or even dismantle the Electoral College system, which was designed to provide an added layer of protection. Now, here's the quote out of the Federalist 68 that everybody is bastardizing. It's like taking a line out of the Bible and not in context with the entire writing of the scripture. Alexander Hamilton, one of the nation's founding fathers, described the elector's function in the Federalist Papers. That would be Federalist number 68. A small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens from the general mass will be most likely to possess the information and discernment requisite to such complicated investigations. What they're saying is, and this is the understanding that Cisneros has, that he says the relationship between the electors and the American public as loosely reflective of the relationship between parents and a family unit. And he basically goes on to say that when a family unit, even though good parents, they act in the best interest of the child, and even though the child wants something, or even though this is the way it is, it may be contrary to the desire of the children for the parent to act differently than what the child wants. Basically saying that, okay, the Electoral College or the respective states that sway the Electoral College votes into the Trump category or column, we should just counter that because these children don't really know what they're talking about. Now, this is the elector himself talking like this, okay? Now, the quote, a small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens. Think about that for a minute. A small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens from the general mass. Notice none of that is being coined in this argument. It's what they're saying is the electors have been chosen, and the electors are supposed to be the check and balance. Let's give you an analogy. Let me give you a comparison. Superdelegates. That's what the left has with their superdelegates. That's what the Democrat Party has. You'll remember Debbie Wasserman Schultz when it first surfaced that the superdelegates were going to give Hillary Clinton the election regardless of what happened in the Sanders campaign. And she was asked about it by Chris Matthews. And she said there and on several other shows that the superdelegates were designed for the purpose of not allowing, in her words, a grassroots candidate to be nominated for the office of president. Well, the Electoral College was designed for the purpose of making sure that just a few states would not determine the outcome of the election at the expense of the other states in the union. That was the check and balance. Now, people are arguing that, no, it was all about slavery, and it was, it was all about the founders didn't really want a democracy. And no, it was put there for the purpose of exactly what happened in this election, that one or two or three states collectively could trump the votes of everybody else, and we would be forced to accept the outcome based on popularity. And Hamilton writes about this in Federalist 68, which we're going to get into in a minute. I'm giving you, this is my introduction to the Federalist 68. That's what we're going to go into in a few moments here. Now, I said earlier that Trump should welcome an election recount because I think it would verify his statement all throughout the campaign that the elections are rigged. And I'm going to go even further and say that they are rigged because of what I found out after reading the Federalist 68 in its entirety. Yeah, the elections are rigged, even though Donald Trump won with the Electoral College. Even though the system worked the way it was supposed to, it is still rigged. And you'll find out why when I get into it in just a few moments here. I'm just really kind of giving you some foundation here, hopefully, so that you'll understand when I get into this, that you'll be able to follow along with me here. Because there are a lot of things that Hamilton wrote about in terms of making sure that the selection of the president was not so much about what the elitist establishment deemed as qualified to be in office, but to make sure primarily the primary concern of the Electoral College was to ensure that all states were equally represented and their voices heard in determining who was going to be the head of the executive branch, and protect, the electors were put there to protect against a possible tyrant coming into office. That was the primary purpose. They were supposed to determine whether or not, as Hamilton puts it here, and I'm going to read it to you literally in just a moment, that Hamilton was concerned about the idea that a despot could come in and through popularity could get into office and yet not have the United States interest at heart. And so the Electoral College was put there as a check against that, against somebody getting into office that would not be beneficial, somebody that charmed the crowd, like Barack Obama. Okay, a guy that went out with his charisma and charmed the crowd and got into office, and the Electoral College was supposed to check it. They should have checked Obama, but they didn't. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into the Federalist 68 when we come back right after this break. There is an old saying, children should be seen.
Hey, I'll make you a deal. Give me 60 seconds and I'll give you directions to the Fountain of Youth. Okay, I'm joking. Well, kind of joking. No fountains, but youth, I got Nature's Youth and their premier anti-aging product, Nature's Youth RSF. With your sensible diet and exercise plan, Nature's Youth RSF can help you look and feel better. RSF is an all-natural amino acid supplement that supports your body to naturally increase HGH levels without any synthetic hormones. And elevated HGH levels can contribute to increased energy, improved libido, reduced body fat, and improved exercise capacity. Let's be honest, who doesn't want to look and feel younger? Visit the newly designed website at naturesyouth.com or call 800-333-6923. That's 800-333-6923, and like them on Facebook and you'll be included in contests and exclusive offers. What a deal. Oh, speaking of deals, my time's about up. 800-333-6923 or naturesyouth.com. Who needs a fountain anyway? Call today.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When I had a heart attack at 42, I was not sure what the future held. But a year later, the doctors could find nothing wrong with me and took me off all my medication. What did I do? I took a herbal mixture of garlic, cayenne, and a few other herbs mixed in liquid form. I now call this Extendovite. I would have never believed that a few simple herbs could actually change my life like they did. Now it's your turn to see what the powers of garlic and cayenne can do for you. For only $69.95 plus shipping and handling for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid, you too can begin on your path to better health. For more information, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit our website at heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
I've owned my company for 14 years now, and I can tell you that payroll is a 4-letter word. I hate doing it. It eats up hours I don't have, and it costs me money I could be saving. But my accountant's too expensive, and I'm not sure who to call, but I know I need help.
We're Paychex, and we take all the hassles out of small business payroll. We save you time and money. It's easy. Call, fax, or give us your payroll information securely online, and we take care of the rest. We calculate the correct taxes, manage payments and direct deposits. We even send out your checks. Payroll doesn't need to be a 4-letter word anymore. We're so sure that we can save you time and money that we'll give you a month's payroll free. Just for calling 877-663-3830. Get 1 month's payroll for free. Call Paychex right now. 877-663-3830. That's 877-663-3830.
Hey, I don't back anybody unless I believe in them. And I do believe in the value of investing in gold and silver. And the company I trust to buy my gold and silver from is Swiss America. I've been working with them for nearly a decade. I trust them, and you can too. Swiss America will help you sort through and find the best options available when you're considering investing in gold and silver coins. Listen, for over 30 years, Swiss America has been offering Americans what they want in their investments. safety, liquidity, quality, reliability, and a potential profit. Gold and silver have a place in every investor's portfolio. So why not let Swiss America help you diversify your investment portfolio now? Call now for free information. 800-978-3907, 800-978-3907, 800-978-3907, 800-978-3907.
Hey, Bugsy, you hear the news about Vinny?
Yeah, it's a real shame he owed money to the IRS and they finally caught up with him.
Just like Al Capone.
If the IRS can get to Capone, imagine what they can do to little old Vinny, huh?
Poor cat, he was on top of the world, then bada boom, bada bing.
What Vinny needs now is an offer he can't refuse.
Hey, you got a tax problem? Does the IRS claim you owe them a bunch of dough? They can get you too. So call the tax relief line now and learn if you qualify to negotiate your $10,000 plus IRS tax debt for up to a 75% savings. Don't be like Al or Vinny and get busted. Make this free call now. Learn how you may be able to pay the IRS less.
Call now. 866-657-8474, 866-657-8474, 866-657-8474, 866-657-8474.
Don't get your panties all in a bunch.
The Conservative Syndicate.net. Exposing weapons of mass distraction. All right, hey, we're back. The Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. I'm your host, John Matthews, along with Joe Hakos. And just a quick word of encouragement. Visit our website, theconservativesyndicate.net. You can pick up this show, any of our shows, find out whatever you want to know about the show, who the people on it, the people that make up our panel, and, of course, why we do what we do, the way we do it. TheConservativeSyndicate.net. All right, getting back into our discussion here about the Electoral College, and I keep promising that we're going to get to the Federal 68, because one thing I have really come to understand about liberals, when they start quoting things, when they start giving us quotes and sound bites, you have to look at the source, because 9 times out of 10, the source, when taken in context, completely discombobulates what they're saying out of context. And you really have to, that's something that a lot of people don't do. The media doesn't really want to do it. Of course, you're going to see, and here, while I'm thinking about this, you're really going to find this out here as Donald Trump begins his administration. It's already started. That everything is being second-guessed and everything is being laid against this measure of qualifications, special interests. They're all talking about Donald Trump, his special interest. All of a sudden, that's a big deal. It wasn't a big deal when Clinton was running the State Department. It wasn't a big deal when Bill Clinton was making his deals back during his administration. But now that it wasn't even a big deal when Mitt Romney was running in 2012. Nobody talked, they talked about his businesses, but they talked about it in terms of him being wealthy, not in terms of conflicts of interest or anything else. They talked about it in terms of him not paying taxes, all that other good stuff. All right. So anyway, I'm going to read another article. I don't always like doing this. I don't like reading verbatim articles because it makes me sound like I don't know how to articulate my own thoughts. And 2, sometimes it's just damn boring. But this is a short article, but I am going to read it to you because this would probably be the cement that lays in the foundation here as we get into the Federalist 68, because it is about the Federalist 68. This is an article that came out of Newsweek last week about the Electoral College, How to Fix the Electoral College System by Newsweek, Matthew Cooper. If you voted in the recent presidential election, there's a pretty good chance you spent time pondering the qualifications of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. There's almost no chance you were thinking about David Ferriero's resume, but you should have been. As the chief archivist of the United States, Ferriero and his colleagues organized a vote of the 538 electors in the Electoral College who actually choose the president. The Constitution requires all electors to meet in their state capitals to cast ballots. Ferriero collects and organizes them, makes sure the states have followed the rules, then presents the ballots to Congress, which is charged with getting them counted. This antiquated ritual will play out again on January 6th. Only then will the U.S. officially elect its 45th president. Outside a fifth grade social studies class, most people don't study the Electoral College, but this year it's controversial because Trump lost the popular vote by well over 1 million votes, and it could be 2 million when the counting's done, which it has, according to the media, exceeded. This happened just 5 times in American history, I mentioned it earlier, but twice in the past 16 years. The other time being George W. Bush's Electoral College defeat of Al Gore in 2000. But given demographics, it could happen again and soon. That's what I was mentioning earlier. The demographics point to a couple of large states like California and Texas holding about a third of the electoral votes, and then everything else split between other swing states. Trump supporters bristle when they hear griping about the Electoral College, and they probably should. No one is doubting their man won by the rules of the game, but we're going to argue anyway. But a lot of people are now questioning why Americans play this silly game every 4 years. Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer, I guess her goodbye gift to Congress, because she's leaving office this year, of California, has introduced a bill to abolish the Electoral College. And anti-Electoral College op-ed writers have been ripping it for weeks now. Among their questions and laments, why has a system that ensures most states are ignored during the presidential campaign while a few swing states are buried with attention from the candidates? Should a minority of voters get to decide who becomes president? And is there any way to fix this system short of a constitutional amendment? Because we don't want to go through a constitutional amendment process. That would be too lengthy. It would take too long. And we don't like that anyways because we probably wouldn't get the outcome that we want. So outside of a constitutional amendment, how can we rip apart the Electoral College? Well, it's the argument that the popular vote trumps everything else. And as I put in here, let me reread this. Why has a system that ensures most states are ignored during the presidential campaign while a few swing states are buried with attention from the candidates? See, what they're saying here is, why is it that a few states determine the outcome of the election? Well, that's exactly what you're arguing with the popular vote. We got swing states. I think there were 6 to 9 swing states that came into play this time. And the swing states, I think the most talked about was Florida and Pennsylvania, I believe, were the two that were talked about a lot because of the number of electoral votes. And these were supposed to put Hillary over the top, and they didn't. But the point being is the way it's coined, the way it's packaged, is that what's happening is the popular vote is more representative of what the country wants, even though that popular vote is compacted, it's compact within a few states. And so their argument is basically what they're saying is we don't understand why a few states can control the popular vote and we're still not getting the outcome that we want, but we'll coin it it's misrepresentative of the entire nation. Think of it in terms of when they talk about things like abortion. Or the majority of the people in America think abortion, a woman's right to choose, should be protected. No, a majority of Americans believe abortion is wrong. But coined and phrased and put together in the way that it's packaged, a woman's right to choose over killing unborn children. See, when you package it a certain way, you can sell it. But when you really bring it out and put it into words that it actually represents, instead of saying, does a woman have a right to choose whether she wants to give birth to the child, or does a woman have a right to murder an unborn child in her womb? Put it out there that way, and you're going to get a completely different reaction. So it's just the way the question is asked. That's why polls and surveys, I feel, are irrelevant. Now, here's the gist, and I'll be able to get this out just before the break, and when we come back, we will actually get into the Federalist. Okay, he says in this article, Matthew Cooper at Newsweek, blame Hamilton. The Founding Fathers worried about mob rule, envisioned the Electoral College as a kind of cooler heads prevail backstop. Alexander Hamilton saw the electors as wise men, most likely to possess the information and discernment to choose a good president. And he didn't want the electors pledged to any candidate. Now, he goes on to say, but these days, the electors are almost always party hacks and former elected officials. Merely a rubber stamp, not some independent body of wise souls solemnly weighing whether to ratify the people's choice. In a bit of eerie prescience, Hamilton in the Federalist 68 seemed to anticipate the controversy over Russian hacking by saying the electors might be able to overturn a popular vote that had been duly influenced by a foreign power. There it is, folks. There is the narrative. That is exactly why we're having a recount in Wisconsin, maybe Michigan and Pennsylvania. That is exactly the reason that they're talking about this whole concept of doing away with the Electoral College and putting it in the hands of the popular vote, because there was some kind of outside influence. The DNC was hacked by the Russians. Nobody has evidence, but that's the narrative, because James Clapper, who headed up 16 of the intelligence agencies that they claim all say the evidence points towards Russian hacking, came out and collectively said, yep, that's what happened. And then they pull in the extra one, Jay Johnson out of the Homeland Security, both Obama lapdogs. See, you didn't get 16 individual statements from these intelligence agencies that Russia was the hacker into the DNC. James Clapper oversees 16 of them, head of the NSA. All right, so he is the one that speaks collectively. What he did was he went to those 16 agencies and he said, this is going to be what we're going to say. And everybody nodded their heads and said, yes, sir. That's what happened here. But then, see, now what they're saying here, the illusion is, or the narrative, the idea, the innuendo that Obama says we're not supposed to judge things by, is that the Russians exerted undue influence over this election process. Therefore, we have to look at this thing. And that's what the recount, that's the argument, the real argument for the recount. We want to be able to prove that the Russians influenced this election so that we can go back, we can eliminate the Electoral College and put it back in the hands of the people. That's going to be the narrative. That's the way they're going to play it out. But I'm going to point out some things to you about this as soon as we get back from our break here. Short break. We'll be right back right here at the Conservative Syndicate. There is an old saying, children should be seen but not heard. At no time is this more apparent than when politicians speak. TheConservativeSyndicate.net, the adult in the room. Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoso. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoso Live Daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decisions concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardosolive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardosolive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did. History affirms a vibrant civil society thrives on freedom of conscience, religion, and choice. Any society absent these qualities stifles individual responsibility and accountability, thus enslaving its people by denying them their potential for goodness, creativity, and altruism. To that extent, oppression, coercion, and totalitarianism are multiplied exponentially. To counter such outcomes, the American Freedom Alliance was formed. The AFA is a nonpartisan, non-aligned movement which promotes, defends, and upholds Western values and ideals. The Alliance strives to build an international coalition of citizens of the West who together promote and protect moral values, democracy, and freedom. To find out more and become part of this valuable asset in the preservation of freedom and all its rewards, contact us at AmericanFreedomAlliance.org. That's AmericanFreedomAlliance.org. Let freedom ring.
You'll get your panties all in a bunch.
TheConservativeSyndicate.net. Exposing weapons of mass distraction. And we're back. This is the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. I'm your host, John Matthews, along with Joe Hakos. And I left off here in our discussion about the Electoral College. Matthew Cooper at Newsweek, writing about the fact that Hamilton had written in Federalist 68 about the procedure, method, and reason for the Electoral College. Now, you remember I was reading earlier in another article about the along this line, and I think I took time to emphasize it. Let me get back up here. He says here, Alexander Hamilton. I'm reading back in the article I was talking about earlier, the Texas elector who quit, saying he couldn't vote for Donald Trump because of his he's unqualified biblically. All right. And the quote in there was that Hamilton wrote in the Federalist 68, a small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens from the general mass will be most likely to possess the information and discernment requisite to such complicated investigations, meaning that the electors were supposed to be chosen from the masses. And they were supposed to be chosen for the purpose of making sure that they didn't have some kind of despot put into place. Somebody that came in with charisma was able to influence the popular vote, which happened in 2008, by the way. Okay, the popular vote. Everybody voted for Barack Obama for one or two reasons. He was half white, and he was an unknown. They thought he was going to be the great change artist, the great half-white hope, if you want to put it that way, the way I put it anyway. But as Matt Cooper tells us here, the electors today are almost always party hacks and former elected officials. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar to anybody? Perhaps like delegates? In the case of the Democrats, superdelegates? But we know that most delegates are chosen based on being, one, operatives within a party or hold elected positions within the government, whether it be a state, local, normally a state or local government. All right, so that's contrary to what Hamilton was saying. They're supposed to be selected from the masses. In fact, Hamilton had rules on the electors. He said there's some specific rules, and I'm going to paraphrase them first, and then I'll read it to you direct from Federalist 68. Hamilton listed specific rules for the electors, which include the electors meet only within their own specific states to select a president. No individuals who have too great devotion to the president in office shall be selected. No individuals who currently hold elected positions within the government may serve as electors. Now, I'm sure the left would argue, well, they're talking about federal offices. He doesn't say that. He says within the government. That could be at a state level, local level. And what if they're serving within the government in the state, but they were chosen by somebody in the federal government, as is the case in a lot of cases with delegates? Selection of the vice president, he goes on to say. But now I want to get, that's another, I don't want to spend time on that right now. Excuse me. Now, the biggest beef, Mr. Cooper writes, against the Electoral College is that it weights the election in favor of small rural states. It weights the election in favor of small rural states. All right, what they're saying is it weights the election in favor of the minority. That's what they're saying. The number of electors is based on the total number of House and Senate members in each state's congressional delegation. The smallest population state have 3 electoral votes, while California, the largest, has 55, far ahead of Texas, which has 35. Defenders of the Electoral College say that tilting it in favor of small states keeps the presidential race from being a frenzy to harvest votes in the most populated areas, which is exactly what the Clinton campaign had planned to do. Exactly what the Obama campaign succeeded in doing. And that is swaying the largely populated states, which have our biggest urban centers, our biggest democratic governments in major cities, the biggest failures, the biggest people dependent on the government, and you're able to pull those in. You can tilt, you can skew, you can slant the election in the favor of somebody like Hillary Clinton. The founders never envisioned a behemoth state like California. See, they never thought these other states would get so big. They thought it would, basically remain evenly distributed, I guess. You don't have this foresight to know in those days. California was, the end of the world almost in that day and age. Now, I'm going to go here to direct to, because I've only got about 5 minutes left here. One of the arguments by the left, I want to present this. One of the arguments by the left, instead of completely eliminating the Electoral College, is that we apportion the electors by congressional districts. And so the number of electors that are chosen are based on the number of congressional districts within a state. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how that could work. You ever heard the word gerrymandering? We have it out here in California. That's why the Democrats have been able to wrest control of the state away from the Republicans. We still have a large majority of conservatives, or at least sounding conservatives, at least self-avowed conservatives. Whether they understand what it means or not, it's another story. But if you were to look at the rolls, the rolls, you would find there's only like a 3% split between Democrats and Republicans in California in terms of registering. 27%, I think, Democrat, 23% Republican. Okay? But the Democrats have been able to gerrymander so many districts and create so many districts that it's given them a lock on the state assembly. And so they basically can do whatever they want, even though there's opposition, because districts mean more assembly people. More assembly people means you lock in a majority. So the idea here, that's one of the reasons they want districts redrawn, because hopefully if they can circumvent the Electoral College as it stands now, and we could do that with it, let's change it. Let's give it the same flavor that we're choosing electors. We won't get rid of the Electoral College. We'll just skew how the electors are chosen, and we'll do it by districts. Well, the states with the most districts are going to get the most electors, and then you're going to lock it in that way. You still would eliminate perhaps the popular vote. If more Republicans show up in a state to vote than Democrats, but more districts choose than Republicans, well, you can skew. You're still going to do the same thing. You're going to use an electoral system to counter a popular vote. And then you're going to call that fair. All right? But just think of the word, when we talk about district electors, just think of the word superdelegates. Now, Federalist number 68. I'm probably only going to get into a couple of minutes of this because we're coming up on the end of the show here. But one of the things that I want to get here, let's get up here. The process of, Another and no less important disterium was that the executive should be independent for its continuance in office on all but the people themselves. All right, he's talking about who should be chosen as electors. All right? The most deadly adversaries of Republican government might naturally have been expected to make their approaches for more than one quarter, but chiefly from the desire in foreign powers to gain an improper ascendant in our councils. What he's talking about there is, as we said, somebody coming in from the outside of a foreign government and being able to influence and become president of the United States and be able to subvert the whole entire government from the inside. All right? Now, how could they better gratify this than by raising a creature of their own to the chief magistracy of the Union? But the convention have guarded against all danger of this sort with the most provident and judicious attention. They have not made the appointment of the president to depend on any pre-existing bodies of men who might be tampered with beforehand to prostitute their votes. Hamilton is arguing against using people already in elected positions, already people of influences within the respective parties, as being the people that are chosen to be electors in the Electoral College. So it's supposed to be that, it says here, he goes on to say that, they have not made the appointment of the president to depend on any pre-existing bodies of men who might be tampered with beforehand to prostitute their votes. But they have referred it in it, the first instance, to an immediate act of the people of America to be exerted to the choice of persons for the temporary and sole purpose of making the appointment. That means the electors should be elected by the people for the sole purpose of determining whether or not the person that won the popular vote should actually be the person elected to office. Now, we'll go into this more tomorrow in detail here, because if I talk too fast here, like I said, reading Hamilton's writing, They speak a different language in those days than we do today, so I gotta do it kind of slowly. But so come back tomorrow, 3 o'clock on the West Coast, 6 o'clock on the East Coast, and we'll get even more into this. By the time, I promise you, by the time we get done, you're going to have a complete and total understanding of what the Electoral College is, what its function is, and why we need to keep it in this great republic of ours. God bless you. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Conservative Syndicate, the nationally acclaimed, globally syndicated, politically incorrect talk show that seeks to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state. We want to make you aware you can find and access all our show archives at our website, theconservativesyndicate.net, as well as our broadcast stations and times. That's theconservativesyndicate.net. We so appreciate you taking the time to tune in, and we so look forward to continuing to bring you the best in uncompromised talk radio available on the net today. And remember, folks, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down in life. It only matters how many times you get up. I'm John Matthews, along with Joe Hako, signing off until next time right here at the Conservative Syndicate. God bless you, and may God continue to bless America.